The Garden and Old Show members only edition. Today is Monday, Memorial Day. Vince,
I had to look at the date. Yes, May 27th, Monday.
how was your weekend, your long weekend?
It was great. I was just telling you off air that we had a family staycation here at our house this weekend, and we had 15 people, a lot of little kids running around, swimming in the pool, overeating, whether it be, regular food or desserts. We always, as you can imagine, Ryan, there's always way too much food. So it's about time for the body cleanse to happen here.
I like them. That's awesome.
What did you do? What did you do this weekend?
I went to my dad's house in New Smyrna Beach for Friday and Saturday, and my little sister's graduation from high school was on Saturday, so I watched that. Came back yesterday, and then just been kind of having some relaxation time. It's nice to kind of shut it down every now and again.
I love it. So that's great, Ryan. So you did get some downtime, but even a 3-day weekend doesn't seem like it's enough.
It never does.
When you have three, you wish it was 4.
I'm actually, and this is probably a very millennial and younger thought, but I'm of the opinion that in the long term, that a 4-day work week makes more sense than a 5-day work week nationwide in most instances. And because if let's be honest with ourselves, percentage wise of your work day, I don't think anyone does 100% of the time. It's impossible. So I just think I'm one of the believers that a 4-day work week, you would probably get the same amount of work done.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of jobs out there where you could make stuff happen in a 4-day,
Yep.
4 10-hour days,
Yeah.
Some things you can't, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot that you could for sure.
Yeah, especially in our industry, all you would have to do is stagger shifts or have different people on different days, and
Right.
and I don't even know that the hours would have to be different. To be honest with you, I did work 4/12s when I used to work for Apple, and that was great. But that was 4/12s, so long days back then. But other than that, Vince, this is a members only show. So if you are watching this and seeing this, it's because you were a YouTube member. So we appreciate you and thank you all for being a member and supporting the Garden Old Show. You guys are the reason why we're able to keep doing this. So thank you. And we thought it would be fun for this episode because we just launched our new iconography and graphics and banners last week and last week's show. And you're going to see more and more of those going forward. But we thought it would be fun to take a trip down essentially the last 2 months of Vince and I getting first editions, second editions, and then what you ended up seeing as the final. There was a lot of good ideas, potentially good ideas, and some ones that were absolutely not interested type of ideas. But that's what the creative process is about. When you hire someone to do any kind of art for you, there's kind of this the expectation that the first round is going to be rough. You get the core of the ideas. Yes, I like that, but no, I don't like this. And then they hone it in. And so Dagan, who we are working with, which we ended up with a really great product, did just that. He would send it to us and say, "Hey, let us know, let me know what you like, what you don't like, and if you have any comments." And every time we would do that, we would send him a document with our feedback and our notes and what we liked. And he kind of refined until we ended up with the graphics we ended up going with. But Vince and I thought it would be fun to kind of look at some of the ones that were not selected. And some of these, Vince, I don't think they won't be our primary graphics that we use on everything, but some of these may still see the light of day in certain circumstances because I think they're kind of fun.
Yeah, I think that because there's so much time put into them and they're quality things, and they are related enough to be valuable to use for sure.
Right.
But they didn't make the cut necessarily for the things that we want when we want people when people see the logo, we want them to recognize it, right? So they maybe not fall into that type of category. Ryan, let's take it like maybe back even before, and just talk about like how you know Dagan maybe a little
Yeah,
bit, or how you made that connection,
yeah,
and then bring up how like we kind of pointed him to our current stuff to kind of give him a starting point.
yeah. I do want to start out first, Vince, by I am wearing in
Oh,
in
you
in honor of our previous logo, the
yeah.
old shirt. So uh, rest in peace, old logo. I think this all kind of started, to be honest with you, Vince. When we did the podcast, you have to have images and banners and some basic, but we weren't thinking in terms of this is going to be a show that would really get a lot of attention. This was more for Vince and I, but you had to have we wanted, yeah, and it's fun to have your own logo and everything. So it was just a pure passion project for Vince and I. So we just kind of batted around some ideas ourselves and used our crude editing skills. To be honest with you, using other images from other places and removing some items out of it and pulling some logos and kind of combined, and that's where we got the original logos. It's kind of like a PNG a pull out of Chief Osceola. Then you had a little bit of the Westcott building, and then we just messed around with the colors a little bit, and that's how you originated with this logo. But we knew as we got bigger, or if we ever did get bigger, that that was not going to be an option. Not only because um, it's really hard to use on anything because it's crude, it's rough around the edges, but also if we ever became to a point where we were considering ourselves legit or potential business, we want to make sure that we are legally in the right lane and not using other people's work. So, do you have anything you want to add to kind of the genesis of where we started with our graphics?
Yeah, a little bit. First of all, didn't we draw that in Mario Paint? Isn't that how we did that?
I actually used an onlinePhotocollage.com's website
Yeah, yeah.
with some basic layering. Yeah,
Um, but when you're thinking about putting a logo together, because like you said, we did have to have one. It's like, well, what do you think it should be? What do you think it should be? Well, Florida State is just there's just a plethora of icons and imagery and all this other stuff.
hmm
Um, but once you've kind of seen them, you've seen them all, right? So, and people just kind of repurpose certain pieces of it, right?
yeah,
So, Osceola is great, but like you said, I'm sorry, Renegade is great.
yeah,
But like you said, having to reproduce that on anything of consequence, I mean, that's way too detailed. And
yeah,
and for those of you that are frustrated still to this day with the change in the Seminole Head logo, um, that original logo was a complete nightmare to reproduce on anything because of the intricacies of the feather and all these other things. So, and I know there's still a contingent of people out there that do not like the new logo.
yeah. I
Um,
see the old one in the background on your wall.
yes. So, um, anyway, we knew we had to have something
Yeah,
because podcasts have to have it, whatever. But we also knew that that it wasn't going to be good. As a matter of fact, Ryan's wife also not only did those shirts that Ryan's wearing, but she also printed a bunch of koozies,
hmm
right? And I can just imagine how difficult it was to get that logo with all the jagged edges and everything onto anything for
yeah,
anyone to be able to use.
yeah. Exactly. So the second that Vince and I this past season really started seeing growth in our channel to a substantial degree, more than a few hundred. Uh, we had several conversations that maybe it's time to kind of grow up a little bit, not only in our equipment and the AV setup, and doing our our actual on-site kind of reports live from Joe Campbell, and doing we did the Fishware Brewing Company shows, And as we continue to grow, it became more and more apparent that we needed this. We needed to work on our graphics, and I knew once we hit a certain level on YouTube that it was going to be a thing where we needed to create an LLC and all that business related stuff, and that would be a good opportunity to kind of revisit this. So I had been listening for a long time. There's a video game podcast, video game centered podcast, although they also do like pop culture topics and everything, called Sacred Symbols, part of Last Stand Media. So it's uh, Colin Moriarty, who's the head of that organization. And one of the shows they do is called Knockback, where it's him and his brother Dagan, who they bring up things from their them growing up in their childhood. It could be movies, TV, old things that they just enjoy. They even maybe just stories about camping or sports they played. And all they do is they do like a 2-hour show talking and reminiscing about the past and growing up together. And in that show, Dagan consistently brings up, how he's an artist and has worked on TV shows, and that got me to thinking as I listened to it, I want to pull up, and most artists do have a portfolio website, and I pulled up his portfolio and I was like, oh, I really like what he's done, like the kind of work he's done. Vince and I had been talking about doing like cartoon versions of ourselves in a fun way without looking like creepily realistic or anything like that. And so I reached out today again, and to my surprise, he replied, and because I was a Patreon of that channel already, he gave us 50% of his normal rate on like hourly rate essentially, and quoted us out a certain number of hours and a certain price, which was really awesome. Basically, almost a thank you for being a Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where this all got started. And it was slow to get started just because he is a very busy person. But once he got going on it and actually gave us, the first drafts, it started moving at a good pace.
Yeah, and I was happy. Ryan had mentioned several months ago about something new coming, and it was at that time where I said, Ryan, you got to be careful how you promote stuff, because we're not really sure when we were going to get the final result. And so, breaking news that kind of never broke for a real long time. So,
Yeah.
But once we got into a groove with him, he sent the first round over. Like Ryan said, we provided him a Word doc of, what we like, what we didn't like, some concepts we thought had some possibilities, and we can share all that too, Ryan. Right? We can share the Word doc too. We can show people kind of how we did that if they care. I don't know if
Yeah, I
anybody's
mean,
been through this
I think we
before,
can
but
kind of talk about it. I figured as we go through some of the images, we can kind of
yeah.
give our feedback. And some of these, mostly on some of the banner images, I do think that we will end up using them here and there. The logos is where we really, had to narrow down. But
Yeah.
there's some good stuff. There's some bad stuff. There's some things that like don't even use FSU's colors, which Dagan, not being an FSU fan,
Sure.
wouldn't
We had
see it as
to steer
sacrilege.
him. We had to steer him back.
Yeah.
Um, so if you want to start to maybe pull that stuff up, and I'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about. So one of the things that we did was I went to the Florida State website, and they have a page there that is the iconography, the symbolism, the color, the official colors, and all this. So make sure Dagan had all of the official,
Yeah.
RGB codes, or whatever he was going to use, because we wanted it to be as close to being noticeable about Florida State without being a cease and desist, right? Because we've known people that have had that happen to them,
Yeah.
and so and for no other reason than the university wanted to make sure that their brand is protected, which that's what you should do. You should protect the brand, right?
Yeah.
So we did, and one of the things, and we'll talk more about this. One of the things that came up was the font, and we'll talk more about that here
Yeah.
in a moment.
So without further ado, I'm going to kind of share my screen. We're just going to go through some of the banner images. So, for example, this is one design idea I actually quite like, um, for a banner or a bottom screen banner. And so I think at some point we might end up using this one. What do you think?
Yeah, and the only reason why well, we're going to have to change the font on it, but yes, um, the reason why I did not necessarily go forward with this one was because this very much screams football,
Yep, football only.
football only, which we want. Obviously the show is 85% football
Yeah,
right, but it's more than that too. So I didn't want the visual of our
yeah,
show to be for it to turn people off thinking it was only about the gridiron.
yeah,
But for football only things that we're doing,
yeah.
this would be fantastic with the new font that we're using rather than the unconquered font, which is what you see.
Exactly. And to see how many variations you kind of get into, and all of these will have slight variations for the same general idea. You can see how, when an artist gives you kind of a render of something, it tends to have a few different combos and iterations with color differences and everything like that. So that was really awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
and see, like the color here is with the white pop. When you have, like, for example, the gold yard lines, but the white font really makes that pop out.
yeah,
And so those are the kind of things that we would talk back and forth with him.
yeah. And then you have like additional variations that, I don't think Vince and I care too much for the two tone as much.
Right.
But then we get into some other things that we like our general, like this we could use aside from the font. It's a good
Hmm.
idea. Just some general banner images. Anything you guys ever see on the bottom of people's YouTube channels is very much so, they have all kinds of things along the bottom of the screen, but again, several different variations of it.
Yeah,
And
with some shadow effects, right?
yeah, and so we really get into the weeds here on what colors work well together,
Right,
what
right,
colors
right.
don't work well.
Yeah, for example, the black font on the garnet background does not
Work,
and
yeah.
does not work too well. But if you look at our business cards, I did that when I made that business card. Like, it didn't dawn on me that it was so dark that you really couldn't tell.
Right, exactly. And then we get into some additional just again variations of ones that you guys have already seen. So as I'm going through these Vince, then we get to the ones that are like, no, we would never use. Like,
Sure, right.
yeah,
And so we get green, and like you said, Dagan isn't necessarily a Florida State guy, so doesn't really necessarily know how important garnet and gold is, right?
right. In this case,
Um,
he's thinking the field grass, which makes
absolutely.
sense for any other football generalist show, but not for Florida State. So
Now you go back one, like, that looks pretty sharp to me. The one with the lines going through it.
yeah,
And so I don't know, you may see some form of fashion of this at some point. I think that looks pretty sharp.
yeah. But and then we get into these, which are this goes back to variations using the old font, right? But
Yeah.
we didn't want to continue to rely on the unconquered font. So as we go through these, we'll get to the next batch here in a second. That's a little bit more different. Like this is interesting because of the spear outline. We maybe not exactly what we were thinking, but has some good ideas behind it.
Yeah, so I'm partial to the spear, right?
Yeah,
I'm partial to the spear. And so, when we got this first round of graphics for him, and we gave him the notes back, one of the things I put on the document was, I think the spear thing has some momentum.
yep.
So, but not necessarily like as a spear. So we'll see that here in a moment. That's
This
pretty
is
sharp looking.
Yeah. This is where black does work. Is
Yeah, absolutely.
on the gold. And he gave us some different versions of this with different spear lengths, no spear, some spear, don't like that at all.
No,
Um, so we kind of, and this was all in our notes, Tim, like, this looks great. That could be a license plate, that's,
sure.
that's what we're thinking. Um, I don't know how I feel. This almost feels like you're getting cornered, about to be killed.
Yeah. You're in that island off of Australia where,
Yeah.
they kill anybody that gets close to the island.
Yeah.
Now
Really
that,
like
I
this.
mean, that color combo, right? Garnet and gold, I get it, but
Yeah.
the way it's laid out and the way it pops
Yep.
hit, really hit me there.
Also, interesting concept right there. The
Hmm.
highlighting color. And then we continue to get a few more variations, and now we get into things that didn't work at all.
Yeah. This is an interesting concept here though, too, because this is like yard lines, right? And they're
Yep.
like going away from you. And so from a perspective standpoint, it's impressive. It just doesn't really work.
Yeah. And
Now
even with
that's better.
it's better, but uh, you know that is probably the best potential that you could get out of it.
Hmm.
But again, uh, it just doesn't work. Now, Vince, we get to your favorite kind of stuff. This is where
Yeah.
Vince really got to start cooking. I
So
think
this
in
is
all caps, Vince wrote on the notes back.
yeah,
First round was more. What do you call them? More
penance.
pennants. Yeah.
Yeah, because so when I was saying, the spear, but not as a spear, the first thing I thought of was that because this is fan driven, we talk about it all the time. Fans, this is for fans. We are fans. We talk about it as fans. We bring fans on the show. What do fans have? Now, maybe not so much nowadays, but back in the day when old people were young, we had pennants. Like I go out to my garage right now, and I probably should have brought them in. I have pennants, felt pennants of the 1980 Philadelphia Phillies World Series team.
Yep.
I have pennants of Florida State games, and the spearhead looks like a pennant.
Yep.
And that's what I put on there. I said we need more of this because I think this has legs.
Yeah. We just had to do a little bit better, I think, on the design. Like, you know, not great right there. But again,
But
this is
this was
more
the first
feedback.
round.
Yeah, this is
This was
more
the first
feedback.
round, and so as an artist, and I'm sure Dagan would say this, he's not going to spend billions of hours on a
Yep.
first round because he knows there's going to be tons and tons of changes.
This I thought would be a good idea for like business card kind of
Hmm.
type design. This never gonna work right here.
No, that's not going to work.
That's an evil color right there.
It's pretty bad.
And then neither one of us. And this was interesting. I thought this might have some, but again, we're going back to the original conversation, Vince, of
A
football
football,
only.
right?
But we could use this idea for future football seasons.
Yeah, it's very cartoony, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, and then you have like one overlap, one not overlapped. And then this just to me seemed too like, oh, we are making our own logo in paint, and we found a PNG of a football and we slapped text in it.
Right, right, right.
Um, some interesting ideas here to play off of. Again, some of these have some.
So go back. So when I first opened this one up, I was like, oh, something's wrong with the graphic he sent me. But no, this is like an offset, right?
Yep.
So this is intended to be that way.
Yep.
That's so avant-garde to my brain. It's hard for me to connect to that. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't.
Exactly. And then we get into some again just variations of the football. Um, Potentially good for like business card again, but I don't think either one of us was like really gung ho about the football laces in the logo, and so I think we pretty much told them, let's stay away from these football kind of only ones. Now,
Right.
I like some of these
Yeah,
bigger
the
spear.
two-tone spears. Yeah.
I thought were a good idea, but some of them, like one of those is not garnet.
Right, right.
One of them's more Virginia Tech than Florida State.
Remember, this is still the first round, though, right?
Yep.
So,
And he kept. I mean, I do like some of these designs though. All right, so here's where Vince and I
okay,
started to break through
right,
of differences.
yeah. So when I first saw this, and in the first document we wrote, I said, I think the war paint thing has some legs as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, we didn't end up going with anything related to this, but I assumed the point of this was war paint.
Yes.
Um, and it's different. Like I have not seen much of that out in the open, like where people are using that as their logos or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I thought this had some possibilities.
Yeah, and I even said on my feedback on this one, like the idea, not sure if it works for like primary graphics, but I like the general idea of what I really like about it is playing with curvature on the
Hmm.
image. I'm not sure what happened.
You jump right back to the beginning.
I think we reached the end actually.
Oh, that might have been the end of the first round there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get back to it as I fast forward all the way back through all the
So as he's moving back to that, one of the things that we wrote in our first document back to him was that we were not married to the unconquered font, or I forget what they call it, if they
yeah,
actually call it unconquered or not, but that's what I call it. One of the reasons why was, well, there's two things for me, three things. Three things. Everybody's using it.
yeah,
Second thing is, who knows if there's any kind of cease and desist involved with that,
yep,
right? And then the third thing is, I've been wanting to use the flippin' ampersand symbol with Garnet and Old,
and you can't. There's
and
no
we can't because it doesn't exist.
not in that font. Yeah, you always
Not in
had to
that,
switch fonts, do the symbol, and then go back to the other font for the next word.
and that symbol in another font, it just doesn't look right.
Right, exactly.
So that's why you started seeing us do and everywhere, because we
Yeah,
didn't have an opportunity to use the and symbol.
and I do think. Oh no, we weren't done here. I'm
Yeah,
not
it
sure
just
how.
jumped you. So yes, this is a more symmetrical look on the
Yeah,
war paint, like it's on your face, right? Like the war paint's on your face.
yep. Going back to again, we had. This
Now,
was
see,
like it,
here's what I like about this. I like the old school thinking about like phys ed, like sweatshirt, like
yeah,
property of Golden Gate Middle School phys ed department, like it's the
yeah,
block letters, but it can't be in blue.
correct. Now that's
There you,
better.
that's better.
And then we get into some logos. So these are more like what we could use potentially as a square or circles. We're going to get into those a little bit. Interesting idea. I'm not sure that because that's not the capital G in the Unconquered font, but I'm not
Yeah, I don't
sure
know.
how he got that.
I think he customized. I think he
Yeah,
put two things together there, which is kind of sharp. It looks like a spearhead there, right?
yeah,
And so there you go. See that? And he might have had to make that.
yeah. It looks different for sure. But then we get into okay, this is this was the first logo that I saw that I was like, you know what, simple. But again, it doesn't. If you weren't following our show and didn't know us, what does GNO mean to you? Is it a
Girls' night out.
girls' night out? Is it a it could be a maple syrup company for all we know. It doesn't really speak to what we're talking about or what this is. It doesn't speak to it's a show. But I do like
Right.
some of the thought process behind the color concepts here.
Yeah.
You may see me use this like randomly here and there for fun stuff for funsies. Some of these are potentially just like almost like a one-off episode or something, and I'm feeling extra creative.
Yeah. Think about think about doing a show like in the Bizarro world.
Yeah.
Like had Ryan and Vince gone down a different path.
Yep. We got a lot of footballs, as you can see the first time. But here's where we get to the easy rejections, I would call them. This was a easy
Yeah.
no for us, right?
Absolutely.
For a logo.
Oh,
Doesn't work at all.
so I'm a big fan of the tomahawk or the hatchet or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. But there are a number of shows out there that use it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think that looks really sharp actually. It almost looks like almost like Flintstone-y to me, right?
Yeah.
But because there are so many shows out there that are using the tomahawk, I didn't
Yep.
think I didn't want to go that route.
Now here's the first look we get at an initial mock-up that
Yeah,
we
that's right.
both of our minds went, hold on now, I think we have something here. And both of us said something with the headset. The first time you saw it was in this banner image. But this was the first one when we said there's something here on this one. Like
Yeah.
we both were like, you know what? We gotta change the font. We both like, we can use the word and we have on many shows and we still will. But we like the and the actual and symbol. But we were like, it's got some legs here. I'm not sure what else. And now there is a variation coming up and the next we have another folder to go through. That was a potential if
Potential
it could
winner.
have a potential winner, and it could have worked. But I think again, it came down to ease of print and ease of design,
Hmm.
keeping it simple instead of overcomplicating it. But we'll show you guys that. But this was the genesis of our current logo right here. All right, so that is it, Vince. This was the only we saw this, and this is the last image in the initial batch. And we both said, I think we highlighted it and went like, give us more of this, more variations, right?
Give us more of the headset. Give us more of the pennants. And I also said, give us more of the war paint. I did say that.
Yeah, we gotta
Um,
have more we gotta have more
Cowbell.
cowbell. Yeah, exactly right.
I also, in the document we sent to him, oh, okay. Yeah. So we
Yep.
basically said, um, you don't have to stick with the unconquered font.
Yep.
Find something that's similar, that has the same kind of vibe to it. And I think, I just didn't want him to be locked into that because it is very, in my opinion, visually constraining.
Yes. Now keep in mind this is the next round.
Second round. Yep.
In this round, he had received the feedback mainly more pennants and more variations of the headset logo and get rid of there's some things that we're like just no on.
Don't
So
waste any time on those things. Yeah.
as we go through, you're really going to see him honing in on some ideas here that we will end up using. See now we're talking. Now we start to get into current branding stuff and ideas that we really like that
Yeah.
are
So
easily to
here,
print
exactly. So here you've got, the spearhead as a pennant,
with
right?
shadows.
With shadows. So to me,
Hmm.
this is, it's simple, but it's striking.
Yeah, and we both started thinking like car magnet, something like that that you could slap on something, and it would look
Yep.
really really cool. One idea, Vince, I just thought of yesterday, but I hadn't had a chance to talk to you. Is I think it'd be really cool to do a for our MacBooks and something with the Apple icon where you have like things stickers that you can put over it to like use
Mhm.
the Apple icon on the back of your MacBook
Right.
as a skin to add to it and put our
Right.
logo over it somehow. But we'll talk about that another day. But now we're getting into some of the okay, this is good because as a full image, it's great. But what's even better about this concept is individually you can use them in a lot of different ways. You can rotate them individually. You can have them point at things like subscribe. You can put them on the corners, and we have already on the first episode last
Yeah.
Thursday. You saw some of these this kind of language between it. Um, more pennant ideas.
By the way, that font is Rex Inline. And
Rex
that's the
inline.
one, we went with.
Don't know what we were going for, like a windmill or a cross. I don't know. Maybe
Not
not.
sure on that.
But then we get into okay, this is cool, right? This is a really cool idea. You got the spear, you got the pennant on it. I think that would be a really, these are really starting to hone in on. I like the folding of the
Hmm.
of the material there. We're starting to really get somewhere. Not a fan right here.
Nope. Purple and garnet.
Doesn't work at all.
Doesn't matter what color the font is.
Yep, and he did a bunch of those. Black and I did not like these either. The black and garnet again doesn't black and garnet just doesn't seem to work well together next to
Yeah.
each other. As so here was a rejection
Oh.
I had on the image.
Mm.
Interesting idea, the feather, but again, would be really hard to make this work in a logo or a banner image because of the shape naturally of a feather doesn't work well in a circle, a square, or a banner. Really, you almost have to have it in a full page wallpaper or something.
Well, that's because, the feather itself, and if you're going to get it in a circle, the feather's going to be too small to get it
Yep,
into a
exactly.
circle. So,
And that's where you get problems printing because back to the original FSU logo, something so intricate, fine
mhm.
line, it has a hard time picking up on printing.
But
But
I did like this
yeah,
idea for sure.
and if we could have used it, we would have. But all right, here's the worst one we ever got. So when I first opened
I
it
had
and I
to
saw
wash my
this,
eyes when I saw this.
I was like, oh no. Uh, I don't think Dagan knows that UF is our rival and that these colors just don't work. This is
Yeah.
him trying to be playful, and I appreciate that. But yeah, it was going to be a no for me, dog. Now here's an interesting one. Not necessarily the colors, because gives a couple different ones, but the talking
Beach
box.
bubble. Yeah.
The problem we have with this one, guys, is if you're talking about any kind of social media or podcast app, it's either perfect squares or circles. And that little downward icon, we would have to crop.
You have to shrink.
We would have to shrink, and it would make it too small, or you would have to crop it out, in which case it's pointless to have that.
Correct.
So, but interesting. Again, he's given us more. This one worked because it's not a perfect square, not a perfect circle. But here's where we get into like, okay, what are we doing here? Because the colors just didn't work for me. But now, okay, now we see a circle. The first circular image that ends up being our logo. Some interesting ideas here. Okay,
Now,
here we go.
Okay. So when I saw this,
Mm-hmm.
The chevron part of it, the Star Trek thing, I thought was cool. It kind of infers a spear to a degree, but we didn't need that. What I was focusing on was the spearhead as the microphone.
And this is where you get an artist involved, guys. Vince and I, although we would have maybe if we were, let's say Vince and I were part-time, like to consider ourselves artists, which we don't. We probably could have come up with the idea of having like a cool headset. But I don't think either one of us would have ever come to our mind to use a spear tip as the microphone tip.
No, and it's not that, and I don't want to make it out to be some like earth-shattering, Sistine Chapel. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that the simplest things, like when they go together, it just works, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have made that connection in my brain.
Exactly. Now, here we go. Here's where we get into potential could have been.
Yeah, these were close.
Could have been not let's get to the actual. He made a version where we can actually, there we go. So something like this with the G and O as a headset. The only reason, Vince, that I didn't want to do this from my point of view, and we could have added the spear on any of these and would have been easy enough to do. What to everyone else does G and O mean?
For sure.
Nothing.
It says go. If I don't know about the show, I look at that headset and it says go.
Yep. And let's say even if we had done like our current logo and put the name of the podcast in the middle, well, then you have Garnet Old and then Garnet Old twice, essentially. G-O, Garnet Old, all together. It's too much. But we liked, oh, how cool. It's the G and the O. It kind of forms the headset.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a potential. Now, what we could do, Vince, is we could, using our new graphics, put these headphones on our heads, on the characters' heads in future graphics.
Oh, sure. We could. Yep.
And have them wear the headphones, which would be fun. But this was an early, like, okay, there's something to that. Now, I asked for more war paint without the Unconquered font. So this is where him giving us, and we might use these. I think these would be really interesting for business cards.
Could be, yeah.
Because it's simple, and we just need a background color, and that's easy enough to do. But the idea of like how many different variations we can have, like I like that one a lot.
Think about also, we've got the primary logo for sure, but some of these renderings or renditions might be really unique for particular types of shows that we do.
Yes, correct.
And so, Ryan and I have been batting around some ideas on some shows, some different types of shows for the fall.
Yeah.
More to come on that for sure. But I have some particularly in mind that may make sense for the war paint iconography. So,
it also could be, and it's just funny, me thinking in funny terms, that could also be Jimbo's Yellow Brick Road,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So now he gave us some more variations. I don't like the black, but now we get some interesting takes right here. I was never a fan because the spear isn't a spear if it's a cross.
Yeah, that's Yeah, this did nothing for me. We can move on.
And so this
Yeah,
is the
same
that's the
thing.
end, Vince.
Oh, that's the end of this?
Yep. So now we get into um the final one. I
And
believe
at
this.
this point, we're like, okay, we're going with Rex in line bold,
Yeah, 1 second. Let
and
me go for it.
we want um, the pennants, and we want the headset, pretty
I gotta
much.
zoom out for a second. So here's now we gave him the feedback. Now here's him delivering for the first time templates for let me show you some image backgrounds using the potential logo. Let me switch back to the view.
Right. So yeah, you're right. So this isn't the final. I mean, they are final, but they weren't the ones that we went with, right? So
So you can see the spear. Now, what I don't like is the offset and symbol. I can't because
yeah,
it's
and I
off balance.
understand why, right? As a visual person, I understand why it's balanced. You've got the roughly the same amount of text space on the left and the right.
Yeah.
And you'll see in some of the pennant things that he's done, he did the same thing. He put the and with the old.
But my thinking is my brain goes, that says gold with a weird space.
Yeah, I never actually thought that until you said that.
Now we go a little bit more of the headsets because we did say play around with that idea a little bit more. Um, and then we get into some of the final design pennants that like ended up sticking around, colors and the imagery. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because we've been through these pennants are
Yeah,
the
one of
same.
the well, I mean, most of it. We haven't been through all of it. Like for example, the spears there, like look really sharp.
Yeah,
But one of the things with the and symbol is that it has to be smaller than garnet and old,
yep,
so it doesn't look like a G, right? It has to be a smaller font or a
correct.
smaller size.
So here's we get into very close representations of our current logo with the wording and the colors. And there we go. Guys, it's the first time that we saw what Vince and I believe to be okay, let's make that into square and circle versions and see how it looks because we were worried that it might like the headset part might be a little too offset or make it too small. But this is where we started getting our final kind of okay, this is a good idea. This would work.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
is the
So
first one I saw the color, the background gray, which we had never
right,
considered. It just
it
pops
pops it out.
off the gray.
And so, I put the corner bug up there so you could see it because when the image is big, whether it's like a background or something like, you can put garnet and old inside there. But when it's small, you can only get G and O, right? So
Mhm.
that's why you see just the G and O. It depends on the delivery. If the delivery is a small icon, it's going to be G and O. If it's larger, then you will see the
Yep.
full name.
And also, if it's a square, that changes it again because you have a little bit more room. So certain square images you might be able to use the and because it just looks different than a circle would. But this is the first time I texted Vince and I said, "How do you feel about the gray background?" Because it really just stands out more so than white. White is too like white just
It's too
goes
out
right in your
there.
eyes.
And as we know now, because we've said it a billion times, black just doesn't do it.
Yep. So gray, I said, there's something to this. Let's flesh that out. We had a few more renditions of a potential GNO headset here, but for the most part, I think we were both pleased with uh, this look, which is the circle that you see right now, essentially as our logo. This was the first time that Vince and I texted and we're like, yeah, this is. We both agreed that we like this one the most.
Yeah, it's
Um,
clean. The colors um, are stark, like garnet and gold. Like it's a stark look.
yep. And then we
Um,
have different version of that too.
exactly. And so um, the only thing that I thought might make this pop a little bit more, and we may have to play with this at some point, but I thought the headband, like the cushion part of the band,
Yeah,
might look good in garnet.
yeah. And that's
But
easy enough for us
again,
to change.
that's minutia, right?
Yeah, we can change that,
Kind
me
of
and
like
you,
that, right? Kind of
anytime.
like that.
Yeah. Um, we had a bunch of different versions and colors, which we can use. The good news is about this is we can use the other colors interchangeably if we want. This is good for business cards, I think. Like the garnet and old being on the outside. This is an interesting one right here. So this idea of the garnet and old and G and O and the headset, it just there's too much blank space in between the headset. It almost feels like something's missing.
Yeah.
Um,
And by the way, go back
the and symbol
right there. Stay right there.
too small.
Well, it's not. It kind of might be too small, but also, and I know it's in the center of the graphic, but I think it should be higher.
Yeah.
Within the headset. Again, there's too much white space above that.
Yep. And then we're getting to some business card versions essentially and wallpaper versions. Yeah, so like that's great for a business card, and this is where I think the and old actually works because they're offset anyways. They're corners of each other.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then finally, we finally got the StreamYard backgrounds. You guys have seen them. It's right behind us. So
yeah, it's playing right now.
And that's where we landed on our final graphic set. Essentially, is that we had reached a point, Vince, where we knew we could do a lot with the current logo. And what I mean by a lot, I mean we can infinitely change the background color, the foreground colors, the cushions, the mics. It's super easy to do in any image editor, and we can play around with that and make variations. So that's super important because you want to have a little flexibility based on what kind of graphic.
Definitely.
We might get bored of the gray. We might get bored of the, in the future, but the logo doesn't change.
Yeah, think about this. Think about we do a preview show for Florida State versus I don't know, Miami. And we changed the headsets to orange and green.
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't do that. I'm just kidding. We wouldn't.
I always think about, Vince, if we were making T-shirts with this logo, which we want to.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a black T-shirt or a gray T-shirt or a white T-shirt, you might have different foreground colors that you would want a white background to match the white shirt. So things like that were important. And then the iconography was the most important thing for me. The spear indicates it's Florida State, and the colors indicates it's Florida State.
Right.
And the headset indicates it's a show.
Yeah, I mean it. We've talked about the progress from what we started with and how we went back and forth with him, and I think the end result is we have a recognizable brand that is easy to visually consume, right? And you'll know what it is. And it's also there's enough flexibility in there for us to be able to utilize it, across the board, whatever it is, whether it's, digitally or on something printed. And we stayed away from any cease and desist letters, which is really important.
Yep.
Not that Florida State would care about us. But you never know. And I think, once we start, and Ryan and Ron, I haven't really talked too much about this yet, but once we start figuring out maybe what those first handful of merch things are going to be, I think it's going to look really, really sharp.
Yeah, especially on a hat. I know you want a hat, Vince.
I have to have a hat.
And that hat.
I don't go anywhere without my hat.
What's funny is the exact logo as it is now, the gray, would look perfect on the center of that hat.
Yeah. You want to talk about this?
Yeah. So I had, the second I saw the characters, which
you cracked up.
The very first, I love characters, like when you go to like a theme park and get characters. So I was all on board with that. I look a little bit more Asian than I would prefer.
Well, I think you're smiling.
No, I get it. But my wife said I look like a little bit Asian, a little bit, which that's fine. I like it. Little Hank Hill. I mean, a Bobby Hill from King of the Hill.
Right. That's right.
But I liked it. And the only edit that Vince wanted was originally.
Well, hold on. You had to edit yours too.
Yeah, the hair color was a little.
The color of your hair was almost like bleach blonde at first, right? So you had him darken up the hair a little bit.
Yep, and then you had black eyes, and you actually have blue eyes.
And I actually have blue eyes. So, and I thought to when you sent these to me, I'm like, yeah, it looks really great. And then I showed it to my wife, and I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "Well, the only thing I would say is you have blue eyes, so maybe make the eyes blue."
Yep.
And then once Dagan made those changes, Ryan said I looked like a White Walker.
Yes.
So, so there you go on
Being
that.
a Game of Thrones fans, you appreciate it.
I am very appreciative of Dagan, by the way, implying that I have a head of hair
Yeah.
underneath that hat. And that would not be accurate. But the hat, the other thing I was going to ask about the hat, and I didn't do it, we just leave it as is because I kind of like the way the gold looks there.
Yeah.
But also, I used to have a hat that looked almost like that, exactly like that, with the gold piping down the front of the hat. I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to maybe do a little implying the Florida State symbol or the state of Florida, but eventually this hat's going to wear out and I have to wear something different. So maybe just simple garnet and gold works.
Yeah, and the good news is because of the blank spaces on the shirts and the hats, we can put anything we want on these at any
Oh
time.
yeah, we can brand with whoever's going to sponsor the show.
Yes. And then for those of you who aren't familiar with streaming, we use a product called StreamYard. And StreamYard has an overlay, essentially a wallpaper, which is what this is. It's a
Yeah, it's a wallpaper.
overlay.
Sorry. Yep.
But then at the start of the show, you also have a video intro, which you guys have seen if you watched our show last week. The problem is if you just have the video and it ends, you're just kind of like, oh, we're live. And you feel very little control over the exact
Someone's
start
picking their nose.
Yeah, so the video just ends and then you would be on camera. And so it's kind of a lot of like, better be ready for it, which is, if you guys watch other shows, you might notice sometimes they were like almost like, oh, hey guys, that kind of thing. So what we had to do and what Vince worked on is we made a version of the image
From the countdown.
From the countdown, and then we just made a static version of it. This is a static version of it, and then the countdown just appears in that TV, but the images are the same except for the countdown or no countdown. That way, when the video ends, there's not any kind of like, oh, that's weird. It transitioned to something else. It transitioned to exactly where it left off. You guys have no idea anything changed.
But and then we control when we're ready to go live.
Yep. And on our end, Vince hits that other audio cue, the little funky tune right before the show. Yep. And then I can go myself with my own finger, 3, 2, 1. We don't say anything, but I can go, and I am live. And so it gives us a little bit more time because sometimes Vince or myself have been having something weird happen, like whether it be AV wise or audio, something we notice something.
Dogs barking.
Yeah, something like that where we want to hold on that still shot a little longer than would have otherwise happened if the video had just ended and we went right into it. And then that kind of, I guess, wrapped up. That was the last thing we worked on.
Yeah, getting the countdown ready. Graphics.
Yeah. Yep. And now, and Vince, today's YouTube banner, even though I couldn't remember what font he used. But then also we had some issues where we had multiple Canva accounts, but I did build that in Canva. And I don't know if you guys, I know this is a little nerdy and in the weeds, but did you watch the Canva presentation that they did the other day where they demoed some of the new features?
I haven't seen it.
AI, of course, is taking over everything. Like AI is going to be wild. There will be a time in the next 3 years where Vince and I can probably describe a background using our logo that we wanted to do, and it will put it in it.
I'm going to describe to my AI self the show, and I'll have that AI me do the show.
Yeah, do our ad reads. But the most impressive thing that Canva announced that makes it super great for us, Vince, is the ability to take any image, put it in Canva, whether it be say an image at Joe Campbell with 2 players in it, and you can simply grab the parts of that image, like the player, and move them over to a different area on the screen, and then it will use AI to fill in what would have been behind them
Yeah.
automatically. And so that's really great because let's say Vince and I have a picture at a game or something, and there's a random guy walking behind us with a hot dog in his mouth. If you are a
Wearing orange and blue, you're going to
if
get
you
him
were
out
a
of there.
Photoshop expert, you could have fixed that anyways. But now, for two lugs like us, we can just go click object, remove.
Yeah.
And so things like creating banner images and episode media, when you can move around pieces of an image, it'll make our lives easier. So shout out to Canva on doing the Lord's work with
Yeah. We just need to
AI.
figure out our account and then we'll be golden.
Exactly. Vince, anything else you want to say about this process?
No, I mean, it was very enjoyable. I was happy to get it done. I was happy to roll some stuff out, and I'll be even happier when we get some stuff in people's hands if they want it. Which leads me to the next thing is, we talked about it in the last show. What is it? We don't want to waste money on things that people don't care about. Like,
Yeah.
you get a garnet and old pen. Like, that's dumb,
Yeah.
unless you're the one person that wants it. But what are the things that would be valuable enough? They're like, you know what? This is something I'd be proud to wear on my head or put on my car. Like, what
Or
are
a mouse
those
pad.
things? Yeah, those are the, because like I said, we don't want to just get stuff with a logo on it just to get it.
Yeah, so leave it in the comment section of this video. That's the easiest way to find it. Vince, so
Or email us.
one thing I want you to do with the countdown video, or similar to that, is I thought it would be cool to have an outro video in which it shows our maybe some info about the channel, where you can find us and all that kind of stuff, like where it like pops up on the screen in the TV
Yeah,
and plays
e-
we can play the same
easy enough.
audio out.
Easy enough. I mean, I say that it's not easy per se. It's
Yeah.
time, right? It's time.
Yeah. Now there is a lot more that we are going to pull out of all these graphics and everything. You use different pieces, but that's essentially it. And now this goes into exactly where Vince and I wanted to be, which is we have the LLC created, we have the business side taken care of, we have the YouTube partnership, and thank you guys because you're a member, you're supporting us. This is how we're
Yeah,
able to do it.
I mean, I know you hear Ryan and I say this all the time, and you're like, oh, they're just going through the commercials. But I'm telling you, it's just amazing. And a lot of you, I've met some of you in person, but not most of you. And so this is, you don't really know me at all, but I got to tell you, it means something. It really means something that people want to help this show grow. I mean, and I say that to my wife all the time. I can't believe that people are willing to help that happen. So we thank you. And it's not just a commercial. It's not just a commercial to Ryan. It's not just a commercial to me.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time that we never thought this would be what it is today, and now there was some points in which we had to say, oh, we didn't anticipate this, that, or the other, and we had
Right.
to kind of last second,
Right.
oh, we're a YouTube partner now. We probably should have already had an LLC set up.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right. Right.
and we probably already should have the logos and the banners and all that ready to go when we launched said business. So there's a lot of those kind of items that were all maybe a little disjointed and didn't line up perfectly, but that's okay. But because our goal, Vince and I stated a goal going into this coming season, which uh, for any FSU channel, football season, man, that's where you get most of your
Crazy.
most of your interaction, most of your views, just for a little like behind the scenes. Like we had videos in the season, we had videos doing like 5 to 10,000 views. We have like a fourth of that right now on a
Yeah.
good day.
Yeah. Thank you,
So
by the way, if you're
yeah,
watching this.
on the off season, because the reality is most casual FSU football fans don't have time to follow it all year, talk about the nitty gritty. They just want to know when football season's starting. Hey, are we going
What
to
do I
beat
need?
everyone? Are
What
we
do
going
I
to
need to
suck?
know? They
Yeah.
want to know. What do I need to know? Who do I need to look out for? And what are your predictions?
Yep. And so going into football season, we wanted the business stuff done, the graphic stuff done. Vince is gonna probably, I would say, in the next like 3 months, announce some more live in person stuff with us. that we're going to be doing again,
Mhm.
as well as doing, of course, pre and post game stuff. There's even some additional things that we have to talk about and figure out. Like, do we get media credentials? Do we apply for that? If Vince and I are, because keep in mind, we're still fans. We're not a big time network or anything like that. So let's say we had credentials, Vince. Um, we usually are with friends and family that want to go home after the game.
Right. That's right. It's one of those things, Ryan. You and I have talked about it briefly. It's like it'd be cool, but I don't know that I want to delve into that world because it's almost like, have you been to Disney World, Ryan? I know you have. Have you been in the tunnels underneath Magic Kingdom?
Yeah, do you really need to?
Well, I have done that, and it changed my perspective and perception on Disney. Like, so the magic is like I want to be naive a little bit, right? I want to be
Yeah.
naive a little bit. So would it be cool to have that? Yeah, I think it would be cool. But also, like, yeah, but then what?
Yeah. Now we
So
do want feedback. If you guys, as the members
yeah,
of this channel, think, yeah, definitely, you guys should have media credentials, meaning
yeah,
we can get to the post game press
yeah,
conferences and all that kind of stuff.
that would
Um,
push me to do it probably.
if either of us lived in Tallahassee, we probably would 100% do it because one of us would live there and we would, be there
Yeah,
anyway. So at going home a little later is no big deal because you're just going to your house. But a lot of times, Vince and I are leaving back to Jacksonville or Tampa the same day that the game ends, and there's family waiting for us, and they usually want to go to dinner. There's a lot more involved when you're a fan first and doing the show on the side. This isn't our primary work. Maybe someday it will be, but right now we have full time jobs, we have family stuff. So, but yes, we are. These are the kind of things we have to now consider, and sometimes we don't consider it in a very, very organized fashion until it kind of hits us in the face, and we're like, "Oh, we have to." But we're at least set up this season, Vince, for success now that we have the
yeah.
small
It's
things
another
done.
thing we don't. It's another thing we don't have to worry about, right? It's already done. Um, and there are tons of people with media credentials that I trust, right? That get that kind of information. So whether that happens or not is, I got to tell you, it's no skin off my back. I'm happy with the growth we're having, and looking forward to what's happening when in the realm we're in. But if it were to happen, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes, right?
The next step, I think, for Vince and I is probably in the future to at least try to find one brand line sponsor,
Yeah. Um,
which it doesn't just happen. I know
it
uh,
doesn't just happen.
we've been watching all those shows. We know the ones. Talk about 30. There's 30 Zaxby's, and
It's
we
so
all
funny.
know those commercials.
It cracks me up every time too. I
Yeah,
mean, they just do such a good job with that.
yeah,
Um, and sponsorship is um, it's it's not necessary depending on how unless you want to really grow, right? And like Ryan said, he's got a full-time job. I've got a full-time job already. So this kind of stuff is would be would make it easier, right, to be able to do this for sure. But yeah, finding sponsors want to know who you're hitting and how many of those people you're hitting, right? And now we're just this year, Ryan, we're to the point where we can confidently go in front and say, this is how many views we're getting, and this
yeah.
is
We
the
have the analytics
demographic.
now. Yeah,
This is the demographic, and this is the read we're going to do, or what read do you want us to do, and how many times, and all that kind of stuff. So, um, but the main thing for that, for me, Ryan, and I think you agree with this, is that like anything else, the more resources you have in the coffers, the better your product can be.
can be, yes, as long as you stay true to your original vision. And Vince
Yeah.
and I had a conversation actually with a friend of ours. We'll leave his name out of it, but he really kept reinforcing to us to stick to what we are and we have so far. Like if you look at our first videos, it was much more crude. The graphics sucked, our audio sucked, everything was terrible. But the show was pretty similar in the way we interact and how we view things. And I don't anticipate that ever changing. So as long as we stay true to, hey, we are Gar and Old, no inside info, no context, no problem, then sometime that will be some inside info, but we're never going to be the breaking news
There'll never
show.
be a problem.
Yeah, we'll never be a breaking news show. We'll never be a clickbait show. Vince and I are doing the show because we are fans and we want to talk to other fans. That's it.
So yeah, what we'll do is we'll continue doing what we're doing, but we'll just be better at it, hopefully.
Better at it with maybe more guests,
1% every day.
more events,
Yeah,
more interactivity. So those kind of things are what we can do when you start earning a little bit of money to be able to invest, because flying to Ireland and potentially putting on a show is not cheap.
it is not.
But I think we kind of covered it all. It was
We did.
started out as a graphics update, but almost like a channel
Yeah,
update, which I hope the members that watch this, after the fact I'd like to see the behind the how the sausage gets made. I always liked when the shows I follow do this kind of thing, which they have done. I'm a Patreon on a few channels, and they have gone through like um some of the shows I did like where people emailed in questions on like how did you get started and how did you end up doing this or that or the other. And I always enjoyed it because it's like, oh man, these are human beings just like me that decided to do a show, just like anyone out. Guys, if you want to do
that's
a
how it all
show, do a
starts.
show.
Just do it. I'll watch it.
Don't expect 1,000 views the first time. It took Vince and I for our first 1,000 view video 3 years to touch that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people want to make the video and they're like,
some people hit the gold mine quick. They do.
Yeah, with certain kind of content, the ones with maybe some headline grabbing type articles or inflammatory videos. That's not us. But any of you out there can do what Vince and I did. We're not some special people. We had no idea what we were doing. We just knew we wanted to talk about Florida State, and we figured out the rest as we went. And you guys
We were
can
doing it
too,
anyway.
so I encourage all of you to do the same, because you could be right here next to us. But I think that pretty much wraps it up, Vince.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for all the members, and not only being members but also encouraging other people to do it too. It really helps out a lot. And we will see everybody Thursday night at 7.
Absolutely. Garden Old, no inside info, no contacts, no problem. Be well, everyone. Have a great week ahead.
Go Knowles.
Go Noel.